Thank you for tuning into Zim Newsbeat TV.
It ended in tears. Kelly Smith gets life in prison for selling Jocelyn Smith for R20,000. Here is why judge handed that sentence. The Western Cape High Court, sitting in Saldanha Bay, became a scene of profound sorrow and raw emotion as the sentencing hearing for the three individuals convicted in connection with the disappearance of 7-year-old Jocelyn Smith commenced. Kelly Smith, Jocelyn's mother, along with Jacques Boeta Apoilis, her boyfriend, and Stephen O. Van Rhyn, a friend, were found guilty of human trafficking and kidnapping earlier in May 2025, setting the stage for a sentencing process filled with heart-wrenching testimonies and revelations. Jocelyn Smith, a young girl with striking green eyes, vanished on February 19, 2024, and has not been found since. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance have gripped the nation, sparking widespread concern and a desperate search effort that has yet to yield any answers. As the sentencing proceedings began, the focus shifted to the potential fate of those responsible for her disappearance, and the impact their actions have had on those who knew and loved Jocelyn. The opening day of the hearing was marked by explosive testimony from Dr. Marcel van der Watt, a human trafficking expert based in the United States. Drive van der Watt, a former police officer in South Africa with 23 years of experience in the field, delivered his testimony via Microsoft Teams, leaving the courtroom stunned by his assessment of Jocelyn's likely fate. Drive van der Watt, who has previously assisted the FCS unit, SAP's hostage negotiation unit, and the Directorate for Priority Crimes Investigation, known as the Hawks, presented the court with a detailed 35-page report for the sentencing proceedings. His expertise and insights provided a chilling perspective on the potential motives behind Jocelyn's disappearance and the likely circumstances she may have been subjected to. A key point in Drive van der Watt's testimony was the betrayal by a parent, Kelly Smith, the very person entrusted to protect and nurture her child. He argued that this betrayal significantly aggravates the offense. Drive van der Watt stated that while the specific details of any mistreatment remained unclear due to her unknown location, it was highly improbable that Jocelyn had not suffered harm. His assessment stemmed from his extensive background in human trafficking cases and the typical patterns of exploitation seen in such crimes. He further noted that the mention of her physical attributes, such as her eyes and light-colored skin, implied that she might have been targeted for exploitation. He suggested it would be naive to think she was placed in such a situation merely for admiration. Drive van der Watt concluded that evidence relating to harm and child abuse suggested a bleak scenario, and it was very likely that Jocelyn had experienced severe abuse, whether physical or psychological. Evidence presented during the trial revealed that Kelly Smith had devised a plan to sell Jocelyn as early as August 2023, with the price eventually set at 20,000 rand. This revelation underscored the premeditated and calculated nature of the crime, highlighting the deliberate intent to exploit Jocelyn for financial gain. Drive van der Watt emphasized that Kelly's crime was premeditated and calculated, explaining that this indicated significant forethought and intent, as the accused had ample time to consider and deliberate over the nature of her actions and the consequences for Jocelyn, suggesting that it was not a spontaneous act but a calculated crime. He added that the evidence strongly suggested that Jocelyn was sold for exploitation. He further noted that this aligned with the established patterns of trafficking crimes, which reinforced the likelihood that Jocelyn was a victim of human trafficking, a crime that often involves intricate planning and coordination. Drive van der Watt also highlighted the agreement among the accused to maintain silence, thereby obstructing justice and concealing their actions, stating that this level of coordination and secrecy pointed to a shared intent and complicity in the crime. He explained that it was clear that all three accused, along with Laurentia Lombard, were aware of, or should have reasonably known, that Jocelyn was being sold for exploitation. The second day of the sentencing proceedings brought even more emotional testimonies to the forefront. A social worker read several victim impact statements in the Western Cape High Court, providing a platform for those affected by Jocelyn's disappearance to express their pain and anguish. One of the most poignant statements was submitted by Kelly's mother, Amanda Smith Daniels. Addressing her statement directly to her daughter, Daniels expressed her profound disappointment and heartbreak. Daniels' words conveyed the depth of her betrayal and the torment she has endured since Jocelyn's disappearance, expressing that her daughter did not want to take responsibility for her actions and instead wanted to portray herself as a victim. She recalled that her daughter had looked her in the face and promised to speak the next time they appeared in court, and that she had believed her because her daughter had said her lawyer had advised her to speak. However, she lamented that her daughter had lied again, even after she had pleaded with her to speak, and questioned how her daughter could sleep at night and live with herself. Daniels vowed that she would not rest until her granddaughter was found, explaining that she was also a mother who was always worried about her children and grandchildren. She affirmed that she would not dress nicely until Jocelyn was found. Veteran probation officer Errol Daniel Pietersen addressed the Western Cape High Court, delivering a blunt and detailed pre-sentencing report. Pietersen, who holds a degree in social work and criminology and has 16 years of experience, evaluated the three accused at Pollsmoor Prison. One of the most shocking revelations from Pietersen's report was that Stephen O. Van Rhyn allegedly told him that he does not care what happens to Jocelyn Smith. This statement underscored Van Rhyn's apparent lack of remorse and his detachment from the gravity of the crime. Pietersen described Van Rhyn as someone who has a long criminal history, including convictions for robbery, in 2014 and in 2016, drug trafficking in 2018, and housebreaking in 2020. He is also awaiting sentencing on further charges, including malicious damage to property, assault, theft, and a 2022 murder case. During their interaction at Pollsmoor Prison, Pietersen said Van Rhyn acknowledged his drug use but flatly denies involvement in Jocelyn's disappearance, blaming police, witnesses, and even the judge. Pietersen found him unremorseful and emotionally detached, leading him to urge the court to impose the maximum sentence. In contrast, Jacques Boeta Apoilis was described as quiet and reserved. He admitted to using daga, mandrax, and tic, as well as alcohol. Pietersen said Apoilis is in good health and reportedly free of psychological issues. During their interaction, the probation officer said Apoilis expressed fear over the case's outcome. He is a father of 2 young daughters, and he dropped out of school early but was never considered a troublemaker and once played club rugby. He has prior convictions for contempt of court, theft, and violating the Marine Resources Act. Pietersen found him generally respectful and considerate, suggesting drugs derailed what could have been a law-abiding life. Pietersen said Apoilis grew emotional when the trauma Jocelyn might have suffered was discussed, particularly when reminded of his own children. Apoilis claimed Jocelyn went to school on the day she disappeared but fell silent when this was disproved in court. Pietersen's relatives suggested that he may have been manipulated by Kelly. Pietersen recommended a custodial sentence for Apoilis. The probation officer reported that those close to Kelly described her as manipulative, suggesting that it was reasonable to conclude that Kelly Smith was the mastermind behind the trafficking of her own daughter. The court also heard from Jocelyn's grade 1 best friend from Diazville Primary School, whose words were read out in court, expressing that she and her other friends missed Jocelyn very much and were praying for her safety and return. A family friend, 14-year-old Taylor Andrews, who spent considerable time with Jocelyn during school holidays and weekends, composed a touching poem for her a little sister, expressing the deep affection she felt. The poem conveyed the sentiment that Jocelyn had vanished like mist before the sun, and questioned when they might see each other again. Taylor's words also reflected a profound sense of loss and longing, describing her heart as feeling like empty drawers. She expressed the feeling that Jocelyn was taken too soon, and wondered what had happened to her, while also expressing hope for Jocelyn's safety and divine protection. A minute-long video of Jocelyn was played in court after the statements were read, showing a happy Jocelyn smiling, laughing, and enjoying herself with her family and friends. The video had the entire courtroom in tears, with police officers handing out tissues to people who started sobbing uncontrollably. As the video of Jocelyn continued to play, her mother, Kelly Smith, bowed her head and also burst into tears. A picture of a tree of hope, with the leaves made from the fingerprints of Jocelyn's classmates, was displayed on the screen in court. The only fingerprint missing is that of Jocelyn herself, which the school hopes will one day be added when she returns home. Jocelyn's teacher, Edna Mart, faced the difficult responsibility of explaining to her students that Jocelyn had not yet returned whenever they inquired about her whereabouts. She frequently noticed a mix of confusion, fear, and occasional hope on the faces of the children, and noted that many of her pupils were often tearful due to Jocelyn's absence. Mart stated that amidst the emotions the children were experiencing, they had mentioned that Jocelyn's favorite song was, "God Will Work It Out." Consequently, the class collectively decided to begin each day by singing this song. Judge Nathan Erasmus, who was presiding over the trial, adjourned proceedings yesterday for people to compose themselves after listening to the heartbreaking statements and viewing the emotional video. This afternoon, the soft-spoken judge then slapped the convicted criminals with a life sentence. In a decisive end to the harrowing case, Kelly Smith, along with her two co-accused, Jacques Apoilis and Stephen O. Van Rhyn, were sentenced to life imprisonment for human trafficking, in addition to a 10-year sentence for kidnapping.
For these and more stories, tune into Zim News Bit TV.